consumers switch from soft drinks but still want the kick of carbonated.
It's quite a good sort of thing that feels like a treat if you're in a restaurant and you don't really want to drink something alcoholic.
Yeah.
For sparkling water, but you can now get asked if you want still or sparkling.
Yeah, and then they can charge you more for the sparkling.
But the warnings have gone out again about the harm of sparkling water, and one Harley Street dentist in London, quoted today, reckons it's more acidic than wine or even vinegar.
See?
Well, that seems a bit startling. So to join us, Dr. Rob Beaglehole, head of the Dental Association. Rob, good afternoon.
Oh, hi there, Jim. Actually, I'm the spokesperson for the Dental Association.
Sorry, I promoted you wrongly. My apologies. Is carbonated water really something to be avoided?
Well, the Dental Association is advocating ideally that we all drink water, particularly kids. We know that sparkling water is very acidic. It has a pH of between 3 and 4. So if you continually sip sparkling water throughout the day, you will dissolve your teeth.
Is this being noticed at all in the dental surgeries of the nation? Have you heard dentists talking?
I have, actually. It's increasingly an issue that dentists are becoming aware of. We know that not only fizzy water is acidic, but also soft drinks, the Cokes and the Pepsis, and also the artificial sweetened beverages such as the Diet Cokes. They're all very acidic.
But if you're drinking sparkling water, which a lot of people just buy in bulk, don't they, from the supermarket now, flies off the shelves, does it depend on the way you drink it? I mean, if it's a glass, just downing a glass, okay.
Exactly. Well, ideally, it's all about how much you're drinking. So if you're just having one glass a day, or Diane's having her soda stream just once a day, that's
my brandy.
Brandy, yeah. I won't comment on the brandy, but the fizzy water, it's only damaging your teeth once a day. But if Diane's having lots of soda streams throughout the day, it's an accumulation that will cause erosion of the teeth. And once your teeth start eroding, you're more likely to get tooth decay because of obviously high intake of sugar.
So tooth enamel recovers in between each onslaught?
It does, and ideally you shouldn't snack throughout the day and snack sugary drinks, snack on drinks or foods throughout the day. And if you do that, you're more likely to get eroded teeth, which is basically dissolves your teeth.
There are toothpastes now that claim to regenerate lost tooth enamel. Can they do that?
Well, the new the studies coming out are suggesting that they are. I know there's one out in the market, and it's proven to be effective overseas. But it'd be good to see a bit more information. But look, the main thing about your teeth, it's not about the whether you're brushing your teeth or not. It's actually how many sugary drinks or how many drinks you're drinking a day, particularly the sugary drinks.
Okay, so the constant sipping is the problem.
Exactly.
Is it true that if you eat cheese, it neutralises the acidity?
It does, yeah, it does actually, so that's a benefit.
Okay, that's fascinating. And thank you, Rob, Dr. Rob Beaglehole, who is a spokesperson for the Dental Association.
Last time I was here, Jim, you told me to stop flossing. Now we've got other dental issues.
Who said to stop flossing?
It's a coincidence.
Yeah, there was evidence that flossing produced absolutely no benefit.
That's right. And topics coincide with some panellists.
And I've always prided myself on being a diligent flosser, so I was thrown by this.
It was correct information
My
from memory.
just said floss.
Okay. It was disputed information from them. Diane Robertson, thank you. Lovely to see you on the panel. And Jeremy Hanson, you too.
Nice to see you too, Jim.
We're back tomorrow. Thanks, everybody. And Checkpoint coming right up.
Kia ora everyone. Tonight, the Select Committee recommends a ban on smoking in cars carrying children. The government says no. Why? Also tonight, a mines rescue expert tells us he'd seen that Pike River footage and it helped persuade him the drift is safe to enter. Plus, we've also obtained Pike River's own plans for re-entry. Cruise ships will return to Christchurch with the Lyttelton Port Company spending $56 million to make it happen. Labour's list due out today, postponed until tomorrow. Why? The uninsured and underinsured in Edgecumbe and Auckland's Waterview connection. The rumours and speculation about why it isn't open yet are wrong, NZTA tells us. All of that and more coming up after the news, which is next.
RNZ News at 5 o'clock. Good afternoon, I'm Anna Thomas. The police are rejecting suggestions they deliberately withheld footage gathered from inside the Pike River mine from the families of the men who died in the disaster. Footage leaked yesterday shows a robot and 2 men using breathing apparatus inside the drift or main tunnel 3 months after the 2010 explosion. Maya Burry reports.
The Deputy Police Commissioner, Mike Clement, says excerpts of the footage were shown to the families at 2 meetings in Greymouth and Christchurch in 2011. Mike Clement says the police haven't sought to withhold anything they believe would be of interest to the families. He says the majority of the footage involves many hours of featureless tunnels, boreholes or indistinct imagery. The mine's owner, Solid Energy, says there is nothing in the footage to contradict the decision that manned re-entry of the mine is not safe. In Christchurch, Maya Burry.
The Labour Party has delayed the release of its party list for this year's election and is refusing to give a reason why. An announcement was expected today but has now been put off until tomorrow morning. Here's our Deputy Political Editor, Chris Bramwell. And I'm sorry, we appear to be having an issue with the audio there. Health organisations and public health experts say there is no logic to the government's refusal to ban smoking in cars around children. In response to a petition, the Health Select Committee late last year recommended smoking in cars be banned if anyone in the vehicle is under 18 years old. But the government rejected the recommendation, saying it believes present initiatives are sufficient, and the Associate Health Minister, Nikki Wagner, says there is no point putting a law in place that is likely to be flouted. The Health Select Committee Chair and National MP Simon O'Connor disagrees, saying he believes a ban would send a message to the public that smoking around children is unacceptable. Checkpoint will have more on the story after the news. The New Zealand Principals Federation says there is not enough research on the benefits of homework. An Australian primary school has got rid of it, saying replacing homework with optional projects has been hugely successful. Parents and teachers here are divided. There is no national policy and it's up to the individual school to choose what they give to students. The Federation's president, Whetu Cormac, says the education sector can't come to a consensus. He says opinions are varied and there is no evidence that homework improves achievement within schools. Cruise ships will be able to dock at Lyttelton again from the end of 2019. The Lyttelton Port Company today announced it would be spending $56 million on a new berth for the vessels, which haven't been able to come into Lyttelton since the 2011 earthquake. The Mayor, Leanne Dalzell, says Christchurch used to host passengers from 50 cruise ships every year before the earthquake damage. She says the future of tourism in the region depends on getting them back.
We have had to watch the rest of the country enjoy a tourism boom over the last 6 years, and although the valiant efforts of our airport company have really helped us keep our heads above water, we won't regain our share of that boom as of right. This is an investment in our future.
Leanne Dalzell says the new berth will take the pressure off Akaroa, which has filled the gap left by Lyttelton. The former Prime Minister John Key is joining the board of Air New Zealand. He will become a director from September the 1st. The airline says Mr Key is the right fit because of his previous international, commercial and leadership experience, as well as being the former tourism minister. John Key suddenly resigned as Prime Minister late last year. It's 4 minutes past 5. Eric Murray's now former rowing partner Hamish Bond says he'll always cherish the unique relationship the two had. Murray, the 2-time Olympic champion, has retired from rowing, ending the winning streak of 69 races he shared with Bond in the men's coxless pair. After the Rio Olympics, the duo took a year off to re-evaluate their options, and at 34 years old, Murray decided it was time to hang up the oars. Bond admitted he was surprised by Murray's decision, but looks back fondly on their unbeatable partnership.
We both had things that we were better at and different attributes that we brought to the table, and we were able to combine those into a crew and combination that was perhaps better than the parts themselves.
Hamish Bond says at this point he has no plans to retire from professional sport, and you can hear the full interview with Hamish Bond coming up on Checkpoint. Lydia Ko remains at the top of the world golf rankings despite pulling out midway through her latest LPGA tournament in Texas with an eye infection. Second-ranked Korean So Young-roo could have taken top spot if she finished first or second, while victory could also have given third-ranked Arya Jutatungnan of Thailand the top spot. However, the pair finished tied for ninth. And Rafael Nadal has won a record-extending 10th Barcelona Open title, thrashing Dominic Thiem of Austria 6-4, 6-1 to collect his second clay court tennis title in a row after he won the Monte Carlo Masters for a 10th time last week. And that's the news.
New footage from inside Pike River.
To say that this material wasn't evidentially relevant, I find it quite puzzling.
The Prime Minister remains resolute.
Because if people go in there and they die because of an explosion, it's absolutely clear who would be responsible, and that is the people who sent them in.
The families will fight on.
I don't know why he keeps harping on about that, because there's the proof that it's not as dangerous like they say.
Digging for answers. Guy and Aspinall and Susie Ferguson, Morning Report, weekdays from 6. Then on 9 to noon, Trading with India. We talk to a key advisor to the Indian Prime Minister, Narendra Modi. And after 10, Professor Renee Spencer on why well-off young women are facing increasing levels of stress and how letting them choose their own mentors can help. Join me, Catherine Ryan, on 9 to noon after Morning Report on RNZ National.
Now looking at the short forecast for Northland, showers clearing this evening, fine tomorrow. Auckland to Taranaki, including Coromandel, Bay of Plenty and Taupō. Fine weather, early morning frosts in sheltered places south of Auckland, Gisborne, Hawke's Bay, Wairarapa and Wellington. Showers clearing from Wellington this evening and elsewhere tomorrow. Whanganui to Kapiti, including Taihape. Any remaining showers clearing. Cloud increasing late tomorrow and a few showers developing. Nelson, Marlborough and Canterbury, fine apart from a few showers about Banks Peninsula today. Morning frosts in sheltered places. Northwest gales about inland Canterbury tomorrow night. Buller, Westland and Fiordland, fine today. Drizzle patches developing tomorrow, then turning to rain about Fiordland in the evening and southwestland in the evening. Otago and Southland mostly fine with morning frosts inland. However, a few spots of rain tomorrow night with northwest gales inland and for the Chatham Islands. Showers gradually clearing tomorrow. RNZ National. It is 7 minutes past 5. You're with Checkpoint and John Campbell.
Thank you very much indeed, Anna Thomas. Nice to have you with us. Coming up on the program, a smoking ban on cars carrying children. The Select Committee recommends it. The government says no. Why? We have an exclusive report tonight. The Labour Party list announcement postponed. Why? Hamish Bond was surprised about Eric Murray's announcement. All of that and more coming up. But we begin on the West Coast. Police have responded to the release of that video footage from inside the drift at Pike River Mine by saying families were shown it at meetings in Greymouth in July 2011. Families dispute that. Last night, News Hub screened footage showing a robot and two men working at what miners say is an early part of the drift, but with the robot then advancing up it. Checkpoint has today been provided with the same footage. The footage is controversial because the families want to access the drift, believing there may be bodies at the top of it. Solid Energy has repeatedly insisted it's not safe to enter. The families say the footage directly contradicts that. Tonight, Checkpoint can reveal it also appears to contradict Pike River's own tunnel reclamation proposal from August 2011. We have that, more on it shortly. But an expert who was prepared to go in then says it's even safer to go in now. Have you seen this footage before?
Yes, I have seen the footage, John.
That's Harold Gibbons, a highly experienced mines rescue team member, who's previously stated on Checkpoint that he would be prepared to enter the Pike River drift. And in part, he and other mines rescue personnel reached that conclusion after seeing the footage years ago.
I think from memory we may have viewed it just to look at the structural integrity of the drift before we were going to re-enter to put up the seal.
Harold Gibbons is adamant the drift is structurally sound and that the gas inside it is inert, almost pure ethane, no oxygen, manageable combustion risk.
So it's the opportune time to re-enter the mine.
That's not a rhetorical flourish. Harold Gibbons has been into Pike since the explosion. How far up have you been, Harold? Remind us.
I've been up personally somewhere around 200 metres to 300 metres, somewhere like that.
And he'd go back further. He would risk his life because he doesn't think he would be risking his life. And Harold Gibbons says he's done it before for Solid Energy.
Not long after Pike River blew up, I have personally been in behind seals at other Solid Energy mines that were sections of the mine were hastily sealed because they were on fire, and we were sent in as a team to retrieve gear from in behind the seal, that part of the sealed mine.
Where was that, Harold?
Spring Creek Mine.
Harold Gibbons is certain there had been a fire, the mine had been sealed to starve the fire of oxygen, the seal worked, the fire had gone out, the atmosphere was inert.
And when that section of the mine become into a safe stage, very like Pike River is today, a team was put in behind there to retrieve gear for the mine.
Forgive me because I'm not an expert and you are. So when you went into Spring Creek beyond the seal to retrieve gear, is that in any way analogous in terms of risk and environment to going into the drift to look for bodies?
In actual fact, going into the drift in Pike River would be far safer than the job that we did at Spring Creek Mine.
Harold Gibbons was happy to do it at Spring Creek, and Solid Energy were happy for him to do it there. He believes it was safe then.
But the methane levels at Pike River Mine currently are the best that you can get, and that just makes it so much safer.
So how would Harold Gibbons and the miners and mines rescue personnel volunteering to do so, among them Pike survivor Daniel Rockhouse, go up the drift? Well, bit by bit. Consider it like establishing a military beachhead.
We were probably looking at doing, putting up temporary seals in 250 metre increments, and we would ventilate up to that, construct a decent seal, and then you'd start that process again.
Pike River itself considered something remarkably similar. Checkpoint has today obtained Pike River's tunnel reclamation proposal dated August 2011, almost 6 years ago. It says, and we quote verbatim,
"The mine will be entered by mines rescue staff wearing breathing apparatus to construct a set of temporary seals. The seals will be about 300 metres apart from each other, as this is a suitable range to work under breathing apparatus. After one seal has been constructed, the mine has to be ventilated up to the seal before the construction of the next seal can commence."
That was 2011. The mines rescue personnel who were prepared to do that work and who wanted to do that work haven't been able to do so, despite the fact that their plan and Pike's plan was strikingly similar. But Harold Gibbons says the seal they put in has worked, and it really is possible to do it, and to do it safely.
The amount of gas that Pike River is currently holding, and the seals are obviously doing a very thorough job, it has completely enriched the atmosphere full of methane.
And as long as no one introduces oxygen to the mix, it's safe to cautiously work in that environment.
That's correct, and that's
is that correct, Harold? Is that, because boy, lives depend on this being correct. Is that correct?
That is correct, and that is how mines rescue operates. You know, that's how a mines rescue team operates in that environment. You need that enriched, that methane-enriched environment with no oxygen, and it's certainly safe to do so. And that is what we have trained, and that is what we have done as teams in the past over the years.
So you've done this before?
Yes, on several occasions.
It's Harold Gibbons, Mines Rescue expert, speaking to us earlier. Solid Energy were unavailable for an interview today. The Prime Minister says there hasn't been a cover-up following the release of footage showing men in a robot in Pike River in that drift months after the fatal explosion. Bill English says the recording was made available to the families of the 29 men killed in the disaster, and that reports Mines Rescue workers shown in the video were deep inside the mine's main tunnel are wrong. The New Zealand First Leader, Winston Peters, is accusing the government of deliberately withholding the footage because it proves a manned re-entry to the mine's main tunnel. In fact, the drift is safe. Here's our political reporter, Demelza Leslie.
The leaked footage allegedly shows a robot and two men using breathing apparatus inside the drift 3 months after the November 2010 explosion. A former Chief Mines Inspector, Tony Foster, says the robot is shown almost 1,600 metres along the drift, while the men would have been up to 400 metres inside. Winston Peters says the footage is astounding, given the families of those killed have been told time and time again that manned re-entry is too dangerous.
There's all the evidence right in front of you now from a video of men being in there in a calm situation, going about their business. And here's the other thing that you've got to ask yourself. Why was it they were so obsessed with sealing the mine up?
Mr Peters believes the footage has been deliberately withheld from the public.
A number of people are behind it now. The Prime Minister is part of it now. The former Prime Minister was part of it. Nick Smith has got donkey deep in this matter, and if you'd have heard him being interviewed this morning, you would have seen that he let fly with a mission by way of a mistake when he said that everybody knew that men were in there. No, that's not what everybody knew at all.
The police have confirmed the video was taken by a Western Australian robot, which was sent into the drift on behalf of the Pike River coal receivers. In a statement, it says it was 28 hours long, and excerpts were shown to the families at 2 meetings in 2011. During his post-cabinet media briefing, the Prime Minister, Bill English, clarified that.
I can understand the families being upset with this information, but it turns out that the claims are incorrect. Police have today confirmed the Pike families were invited to a briefing and shown excerpts of the estimated 20 to 30 hours of footage from this robot. This happened at meetings in Christchurch and Greymouth in July 2011.
But Mr English could not say which members of the families turned up to the briefings or which excerpts of the footage were shown. He says the video changes nothing with regards to the risk of re-entry to the mine.
The Mines Rescue Trust, whose personnel are shown in the video, have since advised the men were not deep in the drift. Their men were working in a container installed at the entrance of the mine, where they were preparing the robot for its journey. The workers, they say, went no further than 2 metres into the mine during that operation.
The families of the men who died in the disaster have been told that more than 24,000 images contained in 265 gigabyte of data exist from the explosion. The Labour leader Andrew Lyttelton says the government should make that data publicly available.
I do not understand any explanation about why either images haven't been released to the families or there hasn't been an attempt at re-entry. I'm not prepared to go as far as saying cover up at this point, but I simply cannot see any credible explanation about why that should not have happened before now.
The government remains adamant it was publicly known 5 years ago men had accessed the entrance to the mine's main tunnel, but that methane levels are still too high to risk sending people into the drift. From Parliament for Checkpoint, Demelza Leslie.
18, almost 19 minutes past 5. We'll go back to Pike later in the program, but let's look at a completely different story now. Health organisations say they are outraged the government has ignored a recommendation by its own Health Select Committee to ban smoking in cars where children aged under 18 are passengers. In 2015, Smoke Free Northland submitted a petition to the committee calling for smoking in cars to be banned, cars carrying children. And while the government is committed to a smoke-free New Zealand by 2025, it's rejected the committee's recommendation, saying there's no point in imposing a law that's likely to be flouted. Zach Fleming with this exclusive report.
quite frankly, it's not good enough.
The government's dropped the ball on it.
Deeply disappointed.
I don't think they've put enough importance on children, really.
I can't see any logic to why the government's decided not to act.
Spokespeople for In Order, the Cancer Society, the Stroke Foundation, ASH, the Heart Foundation, and the head of Otago University's Public Health Department. They all want smoking in cars banned. And late last year, in response to a petition, the Health Select Committee agreed with them. It recommended smoking in cars be banned if anyone under 18 years of age is travelling in the vehicle. The committee's chair is National Party MP Simon O'Connor.
We thought it would be a very good, I suppose, a moral response, and by that I mean a sort of a statement to people that it's not an acceptable practice.
Research has shown air quality in a car where someone's smoking is as bad as the days in a pub when smoking was permitted, and that's even when the windows are down. But the government rejected its Select Committee's conclusion, saying it, quote, believes present initiatives are sufficient. But there aren't any present initiatives specifically aimed at smoking in cars. The government says it was referring to more general smoking initiatives. So its response has really confused a lot of people. Because in a 2012 survey of 28,000 New Zealand Year 10 school students, nearly a quarter of them, 23%, said they'd travelled in a car in the past week with a smoker. For Māori, that was 40%. So given those numbers, Professor Robert Beaglehole from ASH says a ban's a no-brainer.
It's a total mystery to me as to why they would reject this evidence-based, effective policy, which has got plenty of international precedents.
And he's not exaggerating when he says plenty. Laws banning smoking in cars exist in all states of Australia, most of Canada, parts of the US, UK and South Africa.
We're really curious to know what the logic is behind it, because it just doesn't stack up. And again, these are simple measures to protect the health of our kids. You know,
That's John Loof, CEO of the Cancer Society, lost for words. Equally confused is Julia Rout of the Stroke Foundation.
They've just set up the Ministry of Vulnerable Children, but this was a huge opportunity to protect children that are vulnerable to secondhand smoke, and they've done nothing.
And Louisa Ryan from the Heart Foundation.
When the government says that they feel that they're doing enough to protect children from smoke-free cars, I'm not sure that they have done anything at all.
Co-head of Otago University's Public Health Department, Professor Richard Edwards, is confused too.
There are no existing measures, really, nothing substantial. So how can the existing measures be working if they more or less don't exist? And there is no evidence that there is a decline anyway that the government draw on. So there doesn't seem to be much logic in their response.
And to add to all that confusion, a 2014 Ministry of Health funded survey found 97% of people supported banning smoking in cars when children are present. 3 other surveys all showed 90% plus support. So what does the government say? Today, the Associate Health Minister Nikki Wagner declined to be interviewed. She said in a statement that there is, quote, no point putting a law in place that's likely to be flouted, and said the law would be difficult to enforce. That's something that Health Select Committee Chair Simon O'Connor says was discussed, but ultimately ignored, because the committee found a low level of enforcement would be needed.
I think the committee wanted to make a statement, if you will, that, yep, can be very difficult to enforce. Maybe it won't change huge numbers of people's behaviour, but if we're making a statement that it's not acceptable, maybe that will begin to help and it will add to what's already being done.
More than 91% of the public supports a ban, as do most health organisations, many medical professionals and the Health Select Committee. But the government doesn't, and a lot of people can't understand why. For Checkpoint, Zach Fleming.
And we'll hear more from the Cancer Society CEO, John Loof, when he joins us on the program after 6 o'clock tonight. It's our theme by Lawrence Arabia, aka James Milne. But in the High Court of Wellington, they were rocking to Eminem today, the song the National Party is accused of breaching the copyright of during the last election. Could command fees of millions of dollars if everything goes awry for the Nats. More on that coming up. Hamish Bond speaks for the first time about the surprise retirement of his former crewmate Eric Murray. We have more on that. And does homework support achievement, or should it be scrapped? An Australian primary school has banned it. Is it time for New Zealand schools to follow suit? Don't forget, you can text us on 2101. You can tweet us at Checkpoint RNZ. We are on Facebook, of course, where you can watch us. You can also watch us on Sky Channel 83 and Freeview Channel 50. And our email address is checkpoint@radionz.co.nz. 5:24. Thank you for being with us on Checkpoint. The Labour Party's list has caused ructions, with high-profile broadcaster Willie Jackson upset, we're told, at being placed lower than two other Māori candidates, both of whom are women. The party was expected to announce its list late this morning, but has now delayed that until tomorrow. A sources told RNZ News that Mr Jackson was at number 21 or 22 on the list, below Northland candidate Willow Jean Prime and East Coast candidate Kiri Allen. Mr Jackson has flown to Wellington, reportedly to confront the party over his placing. Now, Labour leader Andrew Little tapped the former Alliance MP to stand for Labour and had indicated he would get a high list placing, but as we'll hear, Andrew Little doesn't have final say over the list. As Willie Jackson questions his placing, sitting MP Sue Moroney has announced she's standing down at the election, having failed to get an electable position. Neither Willie Jackson nor Andrew Little would join us tonight, but former Labour Party President Mike Williams knows a thing or two about drawing up the party's list. I asked him how it worked.
The list needs to be confirmed by the New Zealand Council. Now, that has always been automatic in the past, because the New Zealand Council actually makes up the vast bulk of the moderating committee. The moderating committee consists of the New Zealand Council plus leader, deputy and one other elected caucus member. But my understanding is that there is a challenge that there is not a Maori high enough up on the list. And this has occurred because the sitting MPs in the Maori electorates have opted to get off the list, not to contest the list. So that means that the top person on Maori on the list at the moment, unless it's revised by the New Zealand Council, is Willow Jean Prime, who's either at number 12 or number 15. And there's argument that there's a clause in the Constitution, in the part about the moderating committee, which says that it shall recognise the Treaty of Waitangi guarantees Maori representation. So that's probably my guess, John, what the argument's about.
OK, it's not a good list, Freudian error, it's not a good look that this argument is continuing on the day in which the list should have been revealed, because Labour wanted to sell this list, didn't they? They wanted to say, look at us. This is us, we are modern, we are inclusive, and we are a government in waiting.
It's not a great look, but, you know, the Labour Party is a broad church, and there are lots of bits and pieces to it. And my guess is the women have got a good deal, but Maori haven't. And the New Zealand Council of the party can do anything it likes. So if it chooses to have another look at the list, it can do so.
Is there tension between the council and Andrew Little here? Because Andrew Little likes, rates and wanted Willie Jackson. If he is lower than both he and Willie Jackson thought Willie Jackson would be, is that the council saying, no, he's a Johnny-come-lately, he hasn't served his time and we rate others more highly?
I wouldn't put it that way. My guess is that the moderating committee is very unpredictable. And you cannot make promises about a position on that list, because it's what happens on the day, John. And I can recall a very senior politician who both Helen Clark and I wanted to get a very high winnable place on the list. We couldn't pull that off. And he actually had to go out and win a seat.
Can you name any names, Mike?
Well, it was David Parker. Both Helen and I were strongly supporting David for a high place on the list, but the way it worked out, he didn't get a high place on the list and went and won the seat of Otago for the first and only time a Labour candidate won it. So it's a very unpredictable beast, John, and I suspect that that's what's happened here, that Andrew has said one thing, but, you know, simply couldn't deliver.
Mike, just before you go, we're now hearing that Willie is feeling better about what's going to be announced tomorrow than he was feeling about what was due to be announced today. Can they redo the list? Is this an ongoing process of negotiation, toing and froing, like a Turkish carpet market until, in fact, the list is complete?
No, this is unprecedented. However, it is not unconstitutional. The New Zealand Council can amend the list after the moderating committee has done it, but once it's announced, it's set in concrete. The list is set in concrete when it's lodged with the Electoral Commission, not before.
Mike Williams, former Labor Party president, talking to us earlier. Obviously, we will cover the Labor Party's list when it is actually announced tomorrow. Lots of feedback coming in. Thank you. So, why do we have a mobile phone ban in cars when it's widely flouted? Same argument. No. So what's the difference with smoking? Lobbying and or just an ideological distaste for regulation, asks Andrew. This is about Zach Fleming's exclusive report that the Select Committee recommended that smoking be banned in cars carrying children, and the government has said no to it. I've seen young children in cars where irresponsible adults have been smoking, and it angers me that there wasn't a damn thing I could do about it. Nats have made children more vulnerable, says Frank. And Sean says no smoking in cars will be flouted, so don't bother. Speed limits are flouted too, so presumably the government will be removing those. Thank you all for your feedback. Coming up on the program, Kate and Jerry McCann say they won't give up searching for their daughter Madeleine until they have evidence she is dead. Hamish Bond on Eric Murray's retirement. Was he a bit surprised by it, to do homework or not to do homework, and much more. Nona is next with business, but before all of that, Anna Thomas with the news headlines.
The police insist they did not deliberately withhold film taken from inside the Pike River mine from the relatives of the men who died in the disaster. They say excerpts of the footage were shown to the families at 2 meetings in Greymouth and Christchurch in 2011. The mine's owner says there is nothing in the footage to contradict the decision that re-entering the mine is not safe. The Labour Party is not saying why it has delayed making its party list public for this year's election. It's understood Willie Jackson was unhappy. Sources say Mr Jackson is now all good with his place on the list, but it's not clear whether that's because he's been moved up the rankings or placated in some other way. The government is under attack for refusing to ban smoking in cars around children. It says it believes present initiatives are enough. And the Associate Health Minister, Nikki Wagner, told Checkpoint there is no point putting a law in place that is likely to be flouted. But the Health Select Committee Chair and National MP Simon O'Connor disagrees, telling Checkpoint he believes a ban would send a message to the public that smoking around children is unacceptable. School principals say there isn't enough research on the benefits of homework. An Australian primary school has got rid of it, saying replacing homework with optional projects has been hugely successful. The Principals Federation says opinions on homework vary and there is no evidence it improves student achievement. Cruise ships will be able to dock at Lyttelton again from the end of 2019. The Lyttelton Port Company has announced it will spend $56 million on a new berth for the liners, which have been bypassing Lyttelton since the 2011 earthquake. And the former Prime Minister John Key is joining the board of Air New Zealand. The airline says Mr Key is the right fit because of his previous international, commercial and leadership experience, as well as being the former Tourism Minister. And that's the news.
Thanks, Anna. We'll have more on that big announcement from Lyttelton and its port coming up. Let's turn to business news now with Nona Peltier, who did all her homework at school, didn't you, Nona?
Oh, yes, yeah. Absolutely. I was a really great student.
Yeah. Comes as no surprise to me at all. And a rebound in local and global share markets has lifted return for KiwiSaver funds.
Yeah, that's right. So, there's KiwiSaver funds. A lot of the funds have been going into different kinds of things like bonds and shares and global share markets as well. And what we found is that the more conservative investments have yielded a much smaller return than those with the aggressive investment returns. So the aggressive investment portfolios have returned 5% over the first quarter of the year. That's the 3 months ending March.
5% in 3 months?
Yep. as opposed to the more conservative ones.
Well, the really conservative are just cash, aren't they? So what are they paying?
They're 1.8%,
Right.
not just cash. It could be just, just safe, steady company
Under the
as well.
bed.
But the emerging markets were, very really lucrative for investors, and so it's kind of interesting that the whole overall during the quarter. The overall KiwiSaver investments increased by $500 million to just under $32 billion. $500 million.
Yeah.
That's how much more was made through investments through the KiwiSaver.
Right, because sometimes I ask you questions and I think, is nobody going to be able to answer this? So this is a question from left field entirely. Does that include the money that people are putting in as a result of their deductions from work?
That is what it is.
Okay.
That is.
And so that's not just the return on investments, that's a whole kit and caboodle, is it?
Well, that would be the investments.
So that's a whole lot
The investments
right.
increased.
Yeah.
Okay, so you'd be putting your money in, whatever it is that you put in every pay packet, but overall those dollars go into an investment, whether you've selected a conservative one or an aggressive one, depending on the risk you'd like to take. If you chose a aggressive one, well,
you'd be smiling right now.
You got a 5% return. Not bad,
stuck in crappy traffic somewhere in New Zealand,
going,
or
got
over a
5%.
Pothole in Christchurch.
It may be so.
Nona will have just cheered you up if you're lucky enough to have a KiwiSaver account, right?
Well, that's right. That's true.
What else is happening? Genesis Energy?
Yeah, now Genesis Energy, okay, so they've got some cash. Well, actually, they're going to fund this purchase out of their existing debt, maybe even offer a bond offer. So for people looking for some investments, there you go. Genesis Energy, they're going to buy the LPG business from the Todd Corporation, Nova Energy. That's the LPG business. It will give them about a quarter of the market. So that's beefing up their share there, LPG. They think that's quite a good growth opportunity for them. I mean, the power sector, electricity has sort of been a fairly stagnant. So, if you're looking for increasing shareholder value, there's one way of doing it. Yeah, so they're going to pay $192 million. They have an option to buy also Nova's 12.5% stake in Liquid Gas.
Yeah, Liquid Gas, yeah.
They can buy that for another $15 million. Seems like not very much, for considering they're going to spend $192. And they're going to offer potentially a bond offer. They're going to have more details on that next week.
Thanks, Nona. Very quickly, the future of the Trouble Vocational Training Group.
Well, the share price couldn't sink any lower. It fell to 1 cent.
How do you say the name of this company?
Intuary.
You
won't have to worry about
the share
it, probably.
Prices, okay.
Yeah, they're not
1
doing
cent.
that. Yeah, 1 cent. And that was a company that listed on the market in 2014 at $2.63.
Ouch.
Yeah, it's going to hurt.
Yeah.
And things are not going good. So anyway, where are we finished? Okay, so our top 50 index closed up 3 points. At 7,382. We're still at a 6-month high there. The New Zealand dollars also a little changed as well. It was on the soft side with all the different things going on with the U.S. and so forth. 68.6 U.S. cents, 91.6 Australian, and 53.1 British pounds.
Nona Peltier in the Auckland studio. Thank you, Nona. The expletive, which begins with the word mother, rang out several times in the High Court in Wellington today as the copyright case against the National Party began. 8 Mile Style, the music publisher of the American rapper Eminem, says the party breached copyright by using the singer's song Lose Yourself, or music very similar to it, in advertisements during the 2014 election campaign. Our court reporter Anne-Marie May, who unblocked her ears at all the right time, filed this report.
8 Mile's lawyer Gary Williams said there can be 3 different copyrights in a song, one covering the lyrics, a second protecting it as a musical work, and the third protecting the song's recorded version. He said this case concerns the musical composition. Mr. Williams said the song Lose Yourself is without doubt the jewel in the crown in Eminem's catalogue and is extremely valuable. He said the song topped the charts worldwide, including in New Zealand, and is only licensed for advertising on very rare occasions.
When licensed, the musical work can command fees in the millions of dollars. That's how valuable this song is. Its commercial exploitation is tightly managed, both to protect the integrity of the work and to ensure that it remains a highly valuable and exclusive property.
He said 8 Mile Style also has the right, when Lose Yourself is used in a commercial, to block the ad if it doesn't like what it sees. Gary Williams played the Eminem song to the court. Mr. Williams said it is alleged the National Party infringed copyright by, without licence, playing the actual Eminem song or a substantial reproduction of it to the public. That reproduction was accessed through a music library and its title was Eminem-esque, which the court also heard. Gary Williams said the National Party claims the defence of innocent infringement, but it could not use that because it was utterly clear it knew the work in question was copyright. In a brief statement, the National Party's lawyer, Greg Arthur, said it had been suggested regarding use of the Eminem-esque track that the National Party's concern was to make sure it wasn't sued. However, he said the concern was actually to make sure there was no copyright infringement or complaint. He said a requirement for copyright is that the material must be original, and if there is a low level of originality in the music, there is a low level of copyright protection.
It's not just a matter of saying, yes, it's original, copyright subsists, now we compare them. You have to look much more closely at the Lose Yourself musical work and assess which parts of it are original, how original. Look at Eminem-esque and decide what, if anything, is a copy from Lose Yourself, and then decide whether it's a copy of one of those original parts.
Mr Arthur said the label Eminem-esque on the music used by the National Party was a name given to a piece of music to aid in searching music libraries. The case is expected to run into next week. For Checkpoint, Anne-Marie May.
20 minutes to 6, Hamish Bond says he's surprised at the early exit of his former crewmate, Eric Murray, who announced his retirement from rowing yesterday. They were a remarkable duo. They were unbeaten since 2008, winning 69 Olympic World Championship and World Cup races in a row, but both had taken a year's break before following their Olympic gold in Rio. With Bond focusing on cycling, Hamish Bond told our reporter Joe O'Brien while he's not going anywhere, he was a bit taken aback at Murray's announcement.
I would say I was a little bit surprised, but you know, we'd made a decision to take 12 months away from the sport, but obviously Eric has come to a decision about his future earlier than what we'd initially planned, and I respect his decision. You know, if you're not excited and motivated by the prospect of training and competing on a daily basis, then there's no point putting yourself through it, because you're not going to get the success you're after.
And how would you describe the past 8 years working with Eric?
Yeah, I mean, overall, in terms of results, we've achieved, have far exceeded anything that I dared to dream. And that's been phenomenal. Our partnership has been founded on, I guess, a mutual respect of each other's abilities. You know, Eric was capable of some things physically which I just couldn't match, and that was, I guess, the beauty of our partnership, and that there was no dominant force. We both had things that we were better at and different attributes that we brought to the table, and we were able to combine those into a crew and combination that was perhaps better than the parts themselves.
And can you single out a highlight in that time, a proudest moment?
Well, I guess it would have to be the London Olympics with our first gold medal. You know, to get it right on the day, you have one day every 4 years for 6 minute race where you have to make sure you turn it on. So there's a lot of pressure associated with that. But the other thing that we're most proud of, I think, is the fact that we went 69 races over 8 years unbeaten. That takes an incredible amount of consistency, and what people perhaps, well, they may not understand is that the consistency of our results in racing was just born out of the consistency of the daily grind here at Lake Karapiro. You know, it was that day in, day out consistency in training, which was reflected in our racing.
And you're known to have quite contrasting personalities. Were there times when you did clash, when you wanted to throw him overboard?
Yeah, there were times that we didn't get on, but I think that's part of any relationship. You think of any business relationship, it's much the same. At the end of the day, any ideas or things that we clashed over, I guess it was just what that individual thought would make thought would make us go faster come race day. So when you look at it from that perspective, and it's just what they'll think will make the boat go faster, then you learn to entertain each other's ideas. And one thing we never did, any disagreements we had on the water, we left it there. Once we got off the water and went home, we sort of forgot about it and came back the next day fresh to challenge again.
And so what does this mean for your future? Are you going to stick with rowing or are you looking at cycling, perhaps the Commonwealth Games there?
Yeah, I'll just see where it takes me. So I've taken, I guess, the opportunity of 12 months away from rowing to try and discover what my potential would be in cycling. I'm enjoying the process at the moment. I'm motivated and excited by what I'm doing. The training's a challenge, and I'm heading overseas to the UK and Europe for a couple of months to continue that process, and hopefully I'll come back a better rider. And I just want to, I guess, try and get a handle on how good I can be, and then I can make an objective decision, I guess, around what I'm most excited by and where I think I should put my efforts going forward.
So no immediate thoughts of retirement despite this announcement?
No, I'm not going anywhere and announcing my retirement. I guess I see myself not necessarily as a rower or a cyclist, just as an athlete at the moment. So I'm happen to be an athlete that's cycling at the moment, but there's nothing to say I can't be an athlete that rows in the future.
Hamish Bond talking to our reporter Joe O'Brien. Just to repeat, Hamish Bond and Eric Murray were undefeated over 69 consecutive events. Have there ever been partners like those two when they were rowing together? It's 5:45. Cruise ships will be able to visit Christchurch again from the end of 2019. The council-owned Lyttelton Port Company is to spend $56 million on a new berth for the vessels, which haven't been seen since the 2011 earthquake. Our Christchurch local government reporter Conan Young was at today's announcement.
This is a very exciting day for our city, and I'm going to cut straight to the chase. Today, I'm very happy to announce a new $56 million cruise ship berth for Lyttelton.
Christchurch Mayor Leanne Dalzell says the city used to host 50 cruise ship visits every year before the earthquakes damaged the port. She says the future of tourism in the region depends on getting them back.
We have had to watch the rest of the country enjoy a tourism boom over the last 6 years, and although the valiant efforts of our airport company and CCT have really helped us keep our heads above water, which I thought was an appropriate term for today, we won't regain our share of that boom as of right. This is an investment in our future.
Tony Petrie from Cruise New Zealand says while Akaroa has done a good job of filling the gap, there's a greater benefit for the region when the ships can return to Lyttelton.
The effect on retail businesses in Christchurch will be felt with larger number of guests coming into the city. Akaroa is great, and Akaroa we have really loved, but it doesn't have the variety and choice of retail and venues that Christchurch does. A revitalised Christchurch with choices of shopping and venues, our cruise guests will be digging much deeper into their pockets and spending much more.
Importantly, the new berth at Lyttelton will be able to accommodate much larger vessels than Akaroa, including the world's largest, the Oasis of the Seas, which can take 5,500 passengers.
Those will be extra people coming into Christchurch that haven't been coming in the past. As soon as they're certain that the port is going to be ready, they will start making bookings, and I can tell you there'll be a stampede.
Lyttelton Port Company, not the council, will fund the berth. Previously, the port said it did not stack up financially because it couldn't make more money from container ships. Today, its chief executive, Peter Davey, said the council, as the sole owner of the port, was looking at the wider benefit of the project, not just the port's bottom line.
That's really why we've worked with the council, because some of it makes business sense, not all of it, and we've talked to the council about a mixture between, you know, the good for the whole of Canterbury and the good for our business, and that's why it's a joint thing that we're doing here.
And obviously, if the council wasn't 100% shareholder in the port, this might have been a different discussion.
It would be a lot more difficult to do.
Peter Davies says the berth will not include any buildings or a terminal. He says the work will have a $56 million price tag because the wharf needs to be able to accommodate the new wave of cruise ships, which are up to 3.5 football fields long. The berth will be opened in around 2.5 years in spring of 2019. In Ototahi for Checkpoint, ko Conan Young tēnei.
Let's head from Christchurch to the Bay of Plenty. Whakatane District Mayor Tony Bond wants uninsured and underinsured houses in Edgecumbe fixed quicker than those in other disaster zones. Mayor Bond says he knows there's always frustration with how long work takes, so he set a target of getting 100 yellow stickered homes repaired by Christmas. Joanna McKenzie has more.
It's been 3.5 weeks since the Pike River burst its banks and swept through the town, leaving most of it flooded and many homes unable to be repaired. Of the properties that can be fixed, some of the homeowners didn't have insurance or were underinsured. Tony Bond wants to target these with a project largely powered by donations of funding, skills and time.
We were empowered by the volunteers that came through with the volunteer army. There's so many people that want to help, and of course we know the frustrations of disasters when you are waiting for approvals and things. It can take a long time, and particularly in New Zealand right at the moment there's a huge shortage of labour. When we've got volunteers that are prepared to help, let's get in and help now.
Mr Bond says the first step is to get people to speak up and say what sort of help they need.
Today we're starting with getting people to register, come down to the community library in Edgecumbe, register and actually explain what they need, and then of course it'll go from there.
Retired builder and former councillor John Campbell will lead the project called Livable Homes. He says there's been amazing support for the project.
Very comforting to see the number of people coming forward. We've also got lots of Lion Foundation, Eastern Bay Energy Trust and the Bay Trust, Ngāti Awa, Rotary Clubs of District 9930 and merchants from Edgecumbe and Whakatane looking to help us out.
Glenn Livingston is a counsellor in Christchurch and has experienced firsthand the challenges of trying to help people fix their homes. He says there was a lot of volunteer help in Christchurch and it can be difficult to organise, but also rewarding.
It can be challenging even with the official groups, as it were. So in Christchurch, at the time of the quakes, we had a lot of what are known as emergent groups, such as the Student Volunteer Army. But, challenges and opportunities can present. I guess the key thing is to try and harness them, get everyone on the same page and working together.
Even with the donated help, one Edgecumbe resident, Shane Lowe, thinks it'll be a tough task to get all 100 homes finished by Christmas.
I see that maybe they'll get some of the people back, but I can't foresee them getting everyone back in that time frame. There's just too much work and not enough people to do the work, not enough skilled labour.
But Tony Bond remains confident and he's looking forward to standing in Edgecumbe and announcing these 100 homeowners are back in their properties by Christmas. For Checkpoint, called Joanna Mackenzie-Aho.
9 minutes to 6. Now, the topic that has divided parents and teachers for years, homework, and Australian primary school has got rid of it, implementing optional school projects for years 3 to 6 students instead. Alumbi Heights Primary School says the new policy has been hugely successful, with 100% of students doing the projects, as opposed to the previous low rates of daily homework completion. Here in New Zealand, there's no national policy on homework, and it's up to individual schools to choose what they assign to students. So does more homework support achievement, or should it be scrapped? Edward O'Driscoll reports.
I think they should actually be given the chance to run outside and play.
I guess it depends on the subject matter, because they probably wouldn't even retain the knowledge.
For 8 hours a day, kids have enough time in a structured learning environment, and kids need downtime just to think, reflect, and not have the pressure on formalised learning.
It teaches kids responsibility, that there's always something you have to do from your side.
That was the range of opinions about homework from parents in Wellington. And the president of the Principals Federation, Whetu Cormack, says the education sector can't come to a consensus either.
It is quite varied, and schools across the country would have different policies and procedures in place for homework. However, there is no research to show that homework supports an improvement in achievement.
Mr Cormack says schools are well aware that a lot of parents think homework is pointless.
There's an increasing move in New Zealand schools to scrapping homework and encouraging families to enable their children to participate in extracurricular activities such as sports, music tuition, and actually just being at home and being with family and talking, which is a really important activity, to have lots of conversations to enrich their own vocabulary.
An education consultant and parenting commentator, Joseph Dryson, says parents and teachers are often fighting over ideal homework loads, and they need to come to a compromise.
What the school needs to do is to actually walk a middle ground and say homework is a precursor to independent study, and it should be appropriate, it should be interesting, it should be not too much and not too little.
A senior lecturer in education at Massey University, Dr Jenny Poskett, says the research on the benefits of homework varies. She says some aspects of homework are needed, especially for the first years of primary school, helping with basic spelling, reading and numeracy. But she says learning life experience is also vital.
Parents are the first educators of children. They're the ones who can impart best cultural values, moral principles, sporting and performing arts sorts of experiences, exercise for their children in hours outside of school.
She says there needs to be a balance between homework and everyday skills.
If schools require too much homework and children sitting and fretting about expectations that are not relevant, then everyone suffers. But where people have communicated well and there's interest and building on the expertise of people at home, then everyone wins.
Ms Poskett says national guidelines won't be introduced because there's not enough research on the benefits of homework, but she doubts there'll be an end to the debate anytime soon. For Checkpoint, Edward O'Driscoll.
Already hearing from people on this. Nicola has emailed in, I think, emailed or texted with a smiley face emoji. Thank you, Nicola. A number of New Zealand primary schools have followed educational research and a no homework policy for several years. My children's school, Thorndon Primary, have had it successfully for several years, and Wellington Girls College have it for at least the junior school. It's been great. I guess that must be what we used to call Form 3 and 4, perhaps. Anyway, thank you. Would love your feedback on this. We're getting a lot of feedback. We'll have more before 6. Almost 10 years to the day since Madeleine McCann disappeared from her holiday, well, her parents' holiday apartment in Portugal. Her parents say they won't give up until they know what happened to her. London police have spent more than £11 million in their worldwide search for the 3-year-old who went missing on the 3rd of May 2007. Madeleine's parents, Kate and Jerry McCann, told BBC presenter Fiona Bruce they would not give up until they had evidence. Their daughter, who would now be almost 14 if she's alive, is dead. Bridget Burke reports.
It's a huge amount of time. In some ways it feels like it was only a few weeks ago, and other times it's felt really long. But it is a hard marker of time, I think.
And you referred to it on your website as stolen time.
Well, yeah, I mean, it's time that we should have had with Madeleine. We should have been a family of 5 for all that time. And yeah, it does feel stolen.
Yeah, when you have a child, you subconsciously imagine consciously or subconsciously imagine your future and the future of that child. I mean, how different is your life now to what you must have imagined all those years ago?
Oh, it's a hard one, isn't it? Because it's such a long time, but...
I think before Madeleine was taken, we felt we'd managed to achieve a little perfect nuclear family of 5. And we had that for a short period, and I suppose it's just almost the same way as if your child becomes ill or seriously ill or has died, and like many other families have suffered, then your vision is altered and you have to adapt. And I think that's a theme that, speaking to other people who have gone through terribly traumatic processes with children and other loved ones, that is something that gradually happens, and you adapt and you have a new normality. And unfortunately for us, our new normality at the minute is a family of 4.
Madeleine had 2 younger siblings, twins Amelie and Sean, who were babies asleep in the Portugal apartment when Madeleine went missing on the 3rd of May 2007.
I think it's just that number, it's that 10-year mark which makes it more significant, I think, because it's a reminder of how much time has gone by, and obviously 10's a big number. I think we'll get by as we have any other year, really. We'll be surrounded by family and friends, you know. Obviously, we'll be there remembering Madeleine, as we always have. And
I think that the day and the poignancy of it, that we don't tend to go back to the time because it's so draining, but inevitably on the anniversaries and on our birthday, they are by far the hardest days. By far.
The McCanns say they won't give up until Madeleine is found.
No parent's going to give up on their child unless they know for certain their child's dead, and that we just don't have any evidence. So
my
you've
hope
got
of
to...
Madeleine being out there is no less than it was almost 10 years ago. I mean, apart from those first 48 hours, nothing actually has changed since then. I mean, I think the difficult thing has always been, how will we find her? You know, because you're relying on the police doing everything they can, and you're relying on somebody with information coming forward.
You must have imagined over the years, if you saw her, you know, what you'd say to her.
We're a mum and dad, and she's our daughter, and she's got brother and sister, grandparents, and lots of family and friends, you know. So it'd be absolutely fine, you know. It'd be, well...
I'm sure
It's beyond words, really.
Sure
We'll cope with anything, yeah.
The McCanns say they accept they themselves have come under suspicion since their daughter's disappearance.
People just need to think twice before what they write and the effects it has on it, and certainly I know ourselves with our own experience both in the mainstream media and also on the internet, I'm not going to believe that until I see evidence of it convincing.
And we just have to go with the process and follow it through, whatever it takes for as long as it takes, but there's still hope that we can find Madeleine.
For Checkpoint, Bridget Burke.
It's about 40 seconds before 6. Lots of feedback tonight. Tony Bond is dreaming. Ask the Christchurch people who are still waiting for repairs nearly 7 years later, says Vicky from Christchurch. Shouldn't the National Party be employing New Zealand musicians to compose an original piece for their campaign? Oh, that's right. No New Zealand musician would work for them because their support of the arts is so very lame, says Josh from Dunedin. This is Eminem swearing his way through the High Court magnificently in Wellington. And could a class action be taken against the government on behalf of children forced to inhale smoke because of government action or lack of it? Ask Andrew. We'll have more on that after the news at 6.
RNZ News at 6. Good evening, I'm Anna Thomas. The Prime Minister says there hasn't been a cover-up after footage was released showing men and a robot in the Pike River mine months after the fatal explosion. The New Zealand First Leader Winston Peters is accusing the government of deliberately withholding the footage because it proves a manned re-entry to the mine's main tunnel is safe. Bill English says the recording was made available to the families of the 29 men killed in the disaster in early 2011.
Police have today confirmed the Pike families were invited to a briefing and shown excerpts of the estimated 20 to 30 hours of footage from this robot.
Bill English says he doesn't know which members of families turned up to the briefing or which excerpts of the footage were shown. He says the 2 mine rescue workers shown in the video did not go any further than 2 metres beyond the entrance to the mine. The former Labour President Mike Williams says Labour's decision to delay its list announcement is unprecedented, but not against its rules. Labour was expected to release its list this morning, but has now put it off until tomorrow. RNZ understands Willie Jackson today told the party he was unhappy at being placed 21st on the list. Mike Williams says the party can amend the placements up until they're announced.
This is unprecedented, however, it is not unconstitutional. The New Zealand Council can amend the list after the moderating committee has done it, but once it's announced, it's set in concrete.
Mike Williams says he understands there is a dispute over where the party's Māori MPs are placed. Health organisations and public health experts say there is no logic to the government's refusal to ban smoking in cars around children. In response to a petition, the Health Select Committee late last year recommended smoking in cars be banned if anyone in the vehicle is under 18 years old. But the government rejected the recommendation, saying it believes present initiatives are sufficient. The Associate Health Minister Nikki Wagner told Checkpoint there is no point putting a law in place that's likely to be flouted. Julia Rard from the Stroke Foundation says that doesn't make sense.
They've just set up the Ministry of Vulnerable Children, but this was a huge opportunity to protect children that are vulnerable to secondhand smoke, and they've done nothing.
A court has heard the Eminem song Lose Yourself is a very valuable property, rarely licensed for use in advertising. 8 Mile Style, the music publisher for the American rapper, says the National Party breached copyright by using the song or music very similar to it in advertisements during the 2014 election campaign. Its lawyer Gary Williams told the High Court in Wellington the song is without doubt the jewel in the crown in Eminem's catalogue and is extremely valuable.
When licensed, the musical work can command fees in the millions of dollars. That's how valuable this song is. Its commercial exploitation is tightly managed, both to protect the integrity of the work and to ensure that it remains a highly valuable and exclusive property.
Gary Williams, the National Party's lawyer Greg Arthur, said the title Eminem-esque on the music used by the National Party was a name given to that piece of music to help those searching through music libraries. Immigration New Zealand says Invercargill has been chosen as the 7th refugee settlement location. The Services General Manager Steve Gill says the ongoing increase in the refugee quota, as well as fewer refugee families being settled in Auckland, means an extra settlement area is needed. He says Invercargill was chosen due to the wide range of employment opportunities. Christchurch, New Plymouth, Rotorua and Tauranga were also considered. The first group of refugees is expected to arrive in Invercargill later this year. Fire investigators have spent all day at the scene of a Waikato house fire where a woman died this morning. The fire service says the blaze in Tiro broke out about 3:30. It took 4 crews 30 minutes to contain the fire in the single-storey house in Lyttelton Street. Fire investigators are working with the police's criminal investigation branch to determine the cause. A person is in a serious condition after a crash on Auckland's North Shore. 2 other people have mild to moderate injuries from the accident on Glenfield Road about 4:30 this afternoon. The police say they don't know the seriously injured person was a pedestrian. Drivers are being asked to avoid the area. It's 6:05. Eric Murray's rowing partner Hamish Bond says he doesn't plan on following in his now former teammates' footsteps. The 34-year-old Murray is retiring from rowing after winning 2 Olympic golds and going unbeaten in 69 races alongside Bond in the men's coxless pair. Bond is currently taking a year off from rowing to try his hand at cycling and says at this point he remains committed to the professional sport.
I guess I see myself not necessarily as a rower or a cyclist, just as an athlete at the moment. So I'm happen to be an athlete that's cycling at the moment, but there's nothing to say I can't be an athlete that rows in the future.
Hamish Bond. West's Tigers second rower Elijah Taylor has been recalled to the Kiwi squad as injury cover for the Melbourne Storm's Nelson Asofa Solomona in this year's Friday's Anzac Test against Australia. Taylor last played for the Kiwis in the 2013 World Cup final loss to the Kangaroos. Meanwhile, the Warriors playmaker Kieran Foran says he's inching closer to a resolution on his NRL playing future, and he's potentially open to staying with the Auckland-based outfit beyond this season. Foran is being chased by several Sydney-based clubs for next year, having only signed a 1-year deal with the Warriors. The 26-year-old has reiterated the best interests of his 2 Sydney-based children are the most important factor in his decision, but admitted he'd happily stay in Auckland if he could harmonise his personal and professional lives. And that's the news.
This week on Nights, Lee McKenzie talks about marrying the wrong guy. And believe me, he really was the wrong guy. Having told us the story of rabbits in New Zealand, Lloyd Essler moves on to possums. Fiona Hoban talks about the short but brilliant life of the artist Jean-Michel Basquiat. Fergus Barrowman brings the jazz, and we have a sonic tonic dedicated to cooking. It's all on the menu for Nights this week with me, Brian Crump, after the news at 7 on RNZ National.
And now the short forecast from Met Service to midnight Tuesday from Northland through to Taranaki, including Coromandel, Bay of Plenty and Taupo. Fine weather, early morning frosts in sheltered places south of Auckland. Gisborne, Hawke's Bay, Wairarapa and Wellington. Showers clearing from Wellington this evening and elsewhere tomorrow. Whanganui to Kapiti, including Taihape. Cloud increasing late tomorrow and a few showers developing. Nelson, Marlborough and Canterbury, morning frosts in sheltered places, northwest gales about inland Canterbury tomorrow night. Buller, Westland and Fiordland, drizzle patches developing tomorrow, then turning to rain about Fiordland in the afternoon and southwestland in the evening. For Otago and Southland, mostly fine weather with morning frosts inland. However, a few spots of rain tomorrow night with northwest gales inland. And for the Chatham Islands, showers gradually clearing tomorrow. RNZ National, it's 6:08, your checkpoint, and John Campbell.
And Anna Thomas too, thanks Anna, really appreciate it. More coming up on that story about whether or not smoking should be banned in cars carrying children. That's coming up, but before that, Pike. The Grey District Mayor says to remove any doubts of a cover-up, the government needs to release all of the footage gathered from the Pike River mine since the 2010 disaster. Newly released footage shows a robot and two men using breathing apparatus inside the drift or the main tunnel. Now, the drift is the bit, really the road up to where the digging, the mining is. 3 months after the 2010 explosion, the mine's owner, Solid Energy, has consistently said it's too dangerous to try to retrieve the remains of the 29 men killed. Maya Burry reports.
The police say the footage, which in total is several hours long, was not supplied for viewing in the Royal Commission of Inquiry into the disaster, as it was assessed as having no evidential value. Neville Rockhouse was the mine's former coal safety and training manager. He lost one son, Benjamin, in the disaster, while his other son, Daniel, was one of just 2 survivors. He says the leaked footage is significant, as it confirms the mine's drift is safe to enter.
Yeah, it sort of validates what the family's experts said back in the day when they did an assessment, and verifies that Solid Energy's experts got it terribly wrong, and that the mine would never be safe to enter again, which is, obviously, with the latest evidence, is inaccurate.
Tommy Daly's friend, Milton Osborne, died in the Pike River mine. When asked whether someone needed to be held accountable over the footage not being shown to the families, Mr Daly had this to say.
There wouldn't be enough paper to write down the people that should be accountable for this, honestly. Why have the families got to sit down hours upon hours and look at the footage to find stuff, when the police and that know exactly where it is? They should be giving it to the families and saying, go down this far and you'll see this. But for some reason they're making the families find it all themselves.
The Grey District Mayor, Tony Cockshawn, says releasing all the footage gathered from the mine would help remove doubts about whether it was intentionally withheld.
I don't know if it's been done on purpose, but it does need to be released. Let's just take that bogey of a conspiracy out of this. Let's get all of the footage, all of the stuff that is available for the public. Let's get it out there, get the transparency, and go to the next step.
Tony Cockshawn says that next step is searching the mine's drift for bodies and evidence.
The community in Greymouth, they want closure on this. They want to see a reconnaissance down the drift to eliminate whether there are any miners in the tunnel itself.
But late this afternoon, Solid Energy released a statement rejecting that the footage shows re-entry can be done safely. Its chief executive, Tony King, says the workers shown in the footage are in the first few metres of the drift, which is very different to the risks associated with being deep into the mine's shaft.
The risks around re-entry do not centre around the conditions in the first pass of the drift, which is what is shown in this footage. The significant re-entry risks are mainly beyond the pass of the drift that has been explored by the robot.
Mr King says Solid Energy is working with government agencies and the families on potential unmanned re-entry options. For Checkpoint, Maya Burry.
Earlier in the program we spoke to mines rescue expert Harold Gibbons, who says he would go back in and he thinks it is safe to go back in. That interview is now available online. The Prime Minister has poured cold water on any suggestions that footage from the Pike River mine shows men deep inside the drift or that it was kept secret from families of the victims. Mr English says claims that the government withheld the footage or that the mine was safe to enter are incorrect.
Police have today confirmed the Pike families were invited to a briefing and shown excerpts of the estimated 20 to 30 hours of footage from this robot. Now, this happened at meetings in Christchurch and Greymouth in July 2011, ahead of all the footage being turned over to the Royal Commission. The showing was to ensure that the families were not caught off guard when the information was provided to the inquiry. Police have advised that about 30 family and supporters were at each meeting.
Bill English says there have also been claims that the two men in the footage were deep inside the mine and that the smoke or steam seen rising from the robot countered expert assertions that the mine is unsafe to enter.
The Mines Rescue Trust, whose personnel are shown in the mine, in the video, have since advised the men were not deep in the drift. The Mines Rescue Trust has advised that their men were working in a container installed at the entrance of the mine, where they were preparing the robot for its journey. The workers, they say, went no further than 2 metres into the mine during that operation. At the time, the drift was inert because it had been pumped full of nitrogen.
Bill English says the video does not change the assessment that the mine is unsafe for manned re-entry. Obviously the families and various personnel like Carol Gibbons strongly reject that. But Bill English says Solid Energy is exploring unmanned alternatives and it's expected the technology for that entry will be decided in the next few months. However, a spokesperson for the families of the Pike victims says the families and the QC acting on their behalf only saw a small segment of the robot footage but did not see the men in the drift or the smoke. The QC says in 2013, Dean Dunbar, the father of one of the victims, specifically called for all of the footage to be released, and it wasn't and still hasn't been. 14 minutes past 6, you're with Checkpoint on RNZ. The Cancer Society says it's outraged at a government decision to ignore a recommendation by its own Health Select Committee to ban smoking in cars where children aged under 18 are passengers. In 2015, Smoke Free Northland submitted a petition to the committee calling for smoking in cars to be banned in those circumstances. And while the government has committed to a smoke-free New Zealand by 2025, it's rejected the recommendation, saying there's no point imposing a law that's likely to be flouted. Well, the Cancer Society's CEO, John Loof, told me he questions why the government has set up a ministry for vulnerable children when it hasn't stood up for children travelling in cars with smokers.
Quite frankly, John, I don't think anyone has. The exact quote from the documents, from the government's response, is they say present initiatives are sufficient to deter smoking in cars carrying young children.
What are present initiatives?
Well, that's a good question. I had a look on the government's health promotion agency website, the HPA website, and really there's very little there. These are the people who organise the campaigns around a range of health issues, and there's virtually nothing there. You can there's a few pointers. There's a couple of bullet points there. I think you can order some stickers for your car. That's about it. A few years ago, there were some TV campaigns. Your listeners might remember, there was a lady leaning on the car outside the netball courts having a smoke. That ad, and that ran for a little while, but that's going back a number of years now. So there's not much going on as far as we can tell.
Right, and the Cancer Society is absolutely, singularly certain that this should be a practice that the government says no to.
Absolutely. I mean, you put yourself in the position of a parent who maybe asks a friend to pick up their youngsters from daycare or primary school or something like that, and the kids sit in the car, the adults are in the front smoking away, and the kids have no alternative. They're breathing in that stuff, and they come home smelling of smoke and all the rest of it. I mean, I think most of us would go, hey, that's well out of order. New Zealand does not have a good track record when it comes to the health and safety of its kids. We're at the top of a lot of the wrong statistics, and things like respiratory illness and sudden infant death syndrome and all of these sorts of things have connections with inhalation of tobacco smoke. So, other countries have got on top of this issue, many other countries.
Can you cite examples? So what are the countries that have said no to this full stop?
Okay, every state in Australia. You do this, you get caught in Tasmania, for example. They were the first state over there. You get an on-the-spot $110 fine. So we've got Canada, France, the UK. We've even got 10 states in the United States trialling these sorts of laws as well. And there are a lot of other smaller jurisdictions. But, those are big countries. Canada, France, UK, Australia. They're all on top of this issue. And for some reason, our government has chosen to ignore the recommendations of its own Health Select Committee and its own ministry, and it just, we just can't understand it. We're really letting our kids down.
What happens now? Because there's a sense of bewilderment and frustration from people who work with children or people who understand explicitly the risks of being exposed to cigarette smoke, but the government can choose to ignore everything you're saying if it wants.
Yeah, well, that seems to be the position at the moment. We're certainly calling on the government to reconsider this issue. It's not unprecedented. These other countries are on top of it. They've been doing it for a number of years, and there are a whole raft of additional countries who are contemplating similar legislation. So, this isn't New Zealand sort of going into uncharted waters. This is pretty standard stuff. And even the government's own papers say that there is very strong community support for these sorts of these sorts of initiatives. They've done their own surveys, and yet we've got tens of thousands, but some estimates, according to Otago University, over 100,000 kids a year exposed to this kind of stuff. It's it's a bit hard to believe, quite frankly, John.
John Liu from the Cancer Society, and that's certainly your attitude towards it too. Every single person we've heard from supports the ban. We're also getting lots of feedback on homework, including this from Caitlin, who is a student at Wellington Girls College. Hello, I've been finding your discussion on homework interesting. I'm a senior student at Wellington Girls and I never did any homework in years 9 and 10. That's the 3rd and 4th form. My view on that is that it was a bad decision, as now in year 12, which is the 6th form, I haven't really learned how to study. I tend to push things off and procrastinate heaps. I really do believe that a small amount of homework is extremely beneficial, as it prepares you for the work you'll have to do when you do NCEA. Thank you, says Caitlin. Thank you, Caitlin. NZTA has denied the delay in opening one of the country's largest roading tunnel projects. The Waterview connection is only due to issues with the sprinkler system and nothing else. Now, they're saying it is only due to issues with the sprinkler system and nothing else. The opening of the $1.4 billion project was delayed 5 weeks ago because NZTA said there were problems with the so-called deluge system. It said then it should open in 2 or 3 months' time. The tunnel between Point Chev and Mount Roskill is a key piece of the Western Ring Route. That's a 48k road connecting the southwestern and northwestern motorways, going past the airport, bypassing the city. Brett Glidden, the Transport Agency's Auckland Highways manager, says there still isn't a date for the tunnel opening. I asked him about speculation that the delay was being caused by other issues, such as modelling showing traffic volumes at peak hours could in fact worsen.
That is absolutely incorrect and actually doesn't make any sense. We're building this tunnel to complete the connection on the motorway network. So we have a fully completed motorway network. It will provide an alternate route to State Highway 1. It will provide a direct route to the airport. It has so many advantages, it just makes no sense that we would hold it closed and not allow people to use it. So that is absolutely incorrect.
The only way it would make any sense is if the opening was such an embarrassment in terms of the tunnel's inability to handle the kind of volumes that I'm told your modelling projects. Can you absolutely exclude that?
Look, the tunnel was never going to fix peak time congestion in Auckland, and we've never claimed that it will. There will still be congestion on the Auckland motorway network during the morning and afternoon peaks. But what the tunnel does do is it completes that motorway network. It provides an alternate route to State Highway 1. It gives us much more resilience, much more flexibility. And within the tunnel, we've got 6 lanes, so 3 in each direction. So it's very similar to other parts of the network and provides a lot of additional capacity to the motorway network. And definitely in off-peak times is going to have huge travel time advantages. During the morning and evening peaks, there will still be congestion on the motorway network, but the tunnels themselves provide an alternate route to State Highway 1 and to get through Auckland, to get to the Auckland airport. So, look, we're confident that that's going to make a huge difference to Auckland.
There's on-ramp lights, right? So for people who aren't in Auckland, and I don't know to what extent these are a feature in other parts of the country, but the lights flick on and off at regular levels and 2 cars or 3 cars or whatever go on at a time, right? So you're going to use those at the entrance to the tunnel coming from the west?
Yeah, so there's a bit of misinformation about the ramp signals. So we are putting ramp signals on 3 of the ramps leading into and out of the tunnel, and they may not be on all the time. They are no different to what we've done at State Highway 20, where it joins State Highway 1 in Manukau, and where State Highway 16 joins State Highway 1 in CMJ. In the Central Motorway Junction, we have ramp signals at those locations.
And you're not worried about the backup at the ramp signals? You're not worried about the fact that that's going to extend back into the motorway proper?
No, absolutely not, because the ramp signals are actually there to optimise the entire network. So what we're trying to do all the time is get the best optimal running of the entire network, both the local road network and the state highway network. The ramp signals are just one tool that allows us to do that, which is why we may not have them on all the time.
Brett Glidden, the Transport Agency's Auckland Highways manager, who is absolutely emphatic there is no truth to any of the conspiracy theories about why the tunnel isn't open yet. The mother of an Adelaide woman who has been arrested and charged in Colombia for drug trafficking has spoken out saying her daughter was innocent and was framed. 22-year-old Cassie Sainsbury was arrested after being found with 5.8 kilos of cocaine hidden in her luggage as she prepared to fly from Bogota back to Australia. She could be jailed for up to 25 years if found guilty. The ABC's Sarah White has the details.
Lisa Evans is dealing with the unthinkable.
Well, it's
devastating situation I never thought I would have to deal with in my entire life.
Her daughter Cassandra has been caught with nearly 6 kilos of the drug cocaine in Colombia. She's spoken with Sydney radio Kiss FM about how it unfolded.
She was there on a working holiday, so it was a couple of days' work, and then, just spend a few days sightseeing. Then, but she also met a man that spoke Colombian and offered to be her translator. And she mentioned about these headphones that she wanted to get, and this man said to her, well, I know a guy that if you buy 16 or 18 of them, he can give you a really good price.
Lisa Evans says Cassandra had been trusting this man who gave her the headphones and had no doubt of his intentions.
No reason whatsoever, because he had been helping her all week, just being a nice guy. And then when he said this, Cassie said, oh, okay. And then the day of her departure, he came up to her hotel, gave her a package that was wrapped in black plastic, we think, and she took it, put it in her luggage, and this is where the naive bit comes in, that she didn't even rip it open to just make sure that there was headphones in there.
Her family have now engaged a local lawyer to fight her case.
If she pleads guilty, the minimum is 6 years.
And the family believe Cassandra could have some bargaining power.
If Cassie gives information about the person that gave her this package, it may come down a bit to 4, and they can also work off time while they're working in jail.
That was Adelaide mum Lisa Evans ending that report from Sarah White. Donald Trump has acknowledged an armed conflict with North Korea could potentially kill millions of people. The US president is not ruling out military action against Pyongyang if it continues to pursue its nuclear weapons program. But in an interview with America's CBS network, Mr. Trump said the North Korean leader Kim Jong-un is a clever man but has to be stopped. He also argued that getting Chinese help in North Korea was more important than getting involved in any trade dispute with Beijing. This BBC's Sarah Corker has the latest on this increasingly tense standoff.
So far, mounting diplomatic pressure has not stopped North Korea accelerating its weapons program. Pyongyang has launched 2 failed missile tests in the last 2 weeks, the latest one on Saturday. And in a wide-ranging interview on US television, President Trump stepped up the rhetoric.
If he does a nuclear test, I will not be happy. And I can tell you also, I don't believe that the president of China, who is a very respected man, will be happy either.
You mean military action?
I don't know. I mean, we'll see.
But he also warned of the consequences of conflict.
Massive warfare with millions, potentially millions of people being killed.
And a reminder of America's military might, the arrival of the USS Carl Vinson in waters off the Korean peninsula this weekend. Tensions in the region have intensified, with both North and South Korea conducting military exercises. And when asked about North Korea's young leader, Mr. Trump questioned his sanity, but also had these surprising words of praise.
At a very young age, he was able to assume power. A lot of people, I'm sure, tried to take that power away, whether it was his uncle or anybody else. And he was able to do it. So obviously, he's a pretty smart cookie.
Mr. Trump's comments come as he marked 100 days in office at a rally in Pennsylvania. In that time, he's hosted China's President Xi, who he says is now putting pressure on North Korea, its ally, to scale back its nuclear ambitions. Meanwhile, the US is installing an anti-missile system in South Korea, activity that's attracted some protest from local people. And it sparked this reaction from Pyongyang. Its state-run news agency urged the US to ponder over the catastrophic consequences to be entailed by their foolish military provocation. And so for President Trump, the question of what to do about North Korea remains his toughest foreign policy test.
That's the BBC's Sarah Corker. We're going to end tonight with feedback. We're receiving a lot of it on smoking, Pike and homework. We shouldn't smoke in any car. with any non-smoker, says Ken, echoing overwhelmingly the majority opinion. What's the logic behind not passing a law that will be flouted? Using your phone while driving is illegal, but lots of people do it. Domestic violence laws protect people, even though the relevant laws are flouted frequently. We should still pass laws to keep people safer, says Claire. Hi John, a law banning smoking in cars carrying children will likely be both observed and enforced as much as the ban on using mobile phones, so why bother, says Reese. John, the reason is obvious why the government won't back it. They're getting money from the tobacco lobby, the same as governments all over the world. It's the only reason it's not being completely banned. Quite a few people saying that kind of thing. We'll ask the government if it's accepting any kind of money from the tobacco lobby. The only reason there is so much reluctance to enter fully into the mine, this is Pike River, is that the real cause of the disaster would be discovered. Then there would be a new insurance claim and a new Royal Commission, which the government would not want in an election year. Lots of feedback on Pike, and overwhelmingly people are saying that the volunteers, the mines rescue personnel who are prepared to go in should be able to. One point though, the families and the mines rescue personnel are only going into the drift, or talking about going to the drift. I don't think that I've spoken to anyone who's seriously advocating going into the mine proper. We've got an interview with Harold Gibbons online where they talk about the way they would just install temporary seals, get the condition right within the seal, and then move it up the drift to see whether people leaving at the end of the shift, whether their bodies are on a transporter somewhere at the top of the drift. I don't think anyone is seriously saying that they would go into the mine proper, certainly not at this stage. Thank you for all of your feedback. We really appreciate hearing from you, and we really appreciate you listening to us or watching us. In fact, we appreciate it so much. We'll be back tomorrow at 5. Until then, a very good evening from us all.
RNZ News headlines at 6:30. Good evening, I'm Anna Thomas. The Prime Minister says there hasn't been a cover-up over Pike River, and video from inside the mine was made available to the families of the men killed. Labour's decision to delay releasing its party list is labelled unprecedented, but not against the rules by the former party president Mike Williams. Health experts are baffled by the government's refusal to ban smoking in cars around children. The Eminem song Lose Yourself is described in court as the jewel in the crown of the rapper's catalogue, rarely licensed for use in advertising. And Invercargill has been chosen as the 7th place for refugees to settle. Those are the headlines. Our next news and weather, again at 7.
Karen Walker discusses the changing tides of fashion and what it means to be part of a global marketplace.
When you're a brand who's starting